I pray thee, good Mercutio, let's retire. The day is hot, the Capulets abroad, and if we meet, we shall not scape a brawl, for now these hot days is the mad blood stirring.
Thou art like one of these fellows that when he enters the confines of a tavern, claps me his sword upon the table and says, God grant me no need of thee, and upon the operation of the second cup draws him on the drawer, when indeed there is no need.
Am I like such a fellow?
Come, come, thou art as hot a Jack in thy mood as any in Italy, and as soon moved to be moody, and as soon moody to be moved.
And what two?
Nay, and there were two such there should be none shortly, for one would kill the other.
Oh.
Thou? Why, thou wilt quarrel with a man for cracking nuts, having no other reason but because thou hast hazel eyes. Thou hast quarreled with a man for coughing in the street, because he hath wakened thy dog that hath lain asleep in the sun. Didst thou not fall out with a tailor for wearing his new suit before Easter, or with another man for tying his new shoes with an old ribbon, and yet thou wilt tutor me from quarreling?
And I were so apt to quarrel as thou art, any man should buy the fee simple of my life for an hour and a quarter.
The fee simple? Simple.
Act 3 begins with Benvolio and Mercutio out in the streets of Verona. Benvolio tells Mercutio, let's retire, for the day is hot, and so are tempers. I see a number of Capulets in the street, and if they see us, they are going to want to start a fight. Mercutio teases Benvolio, saying, oh, you are such a fighter type. You fight anyone with no reason whatsoever, even if you're not provoked. We know this not to be true. Benvolio is the peacekeeper, so we can assume that Mercutio is kind of playing and making fun of his friend.
By my head, here come the Capulets.
By my heel, I care not.
Follow me close, for I will speak to them. Gentlemen, good day. A word with one of you.
And but what word with one of us? Could you not couple it with something, make it a word and a blow?
You shall find me apt enough to that, sir, and you will give me occasion.
Could you not take some occasion without the giving?
After Tybalt enters, Mercutio starts to try and provoke him right away, for no reason whatsoever. Tybalt has been very, very polite and gentlemanly in this exchange. And yet, Mercutio responds to him negatively. You want one word with one of us? Well, couple it with something else. Make it a word and a blow. Strike one of us so that we can fight. Mercutio still has problems with Tybalt. He still thinks of him as a poser and a fake. So it seems like he's trying to start a fight, regardless of the conflict between Tybalt and Romeo. That doesn't even seem to be on Mercutio's mind here.
Mercutio, thou consortst with Romeo.
Consortst? What, dost thou make us minstrels? And thou make minstrels of us. Look to hear nothing but discords. Here's my fiddlestick, here's that shall make you dance. Zoons, consorts!
We talk here in the public haunt of men. Either withdraw unto some private place and reason coldly of your grievances, or else depart. Here all eyes gaze on us.
See what I mean? Tybalt just asked Mercutio if he consorts with Romeo, if he hangs out with Romeo. But a consort is also a music group. So Mercutio takes this as offense, and he says, a consort? What, do you make us minstrels, performers? Well, I'll make you dance with this fiddlestick. And he grabs his rapier, his sword. So it seems like he's just trying to pick a fight with any sort of minor provocation he can. Benvolio, again being the peacemaker, steps in and says, we need to withdraw. This is a very public place. If people see us fighting, this will not go well. So he is the voice of reason once again.
Men's eyes were made to look, and let them gaze. I will not budge for no man's pleasure, I.
Well, peace be with you, sir. Here comes my man.
But I'll be hanged, sir, if he wear your livery.
Romeo, the love I bear thee can afford no better term than this. Thou'rt villain.
Tybalt, The reason that I have to love thee doth much excuse the appertaining rage to such a greeting. Villain am I none. Therefore farewell. I see thou knowest me not.
When Romeo enters here, we have to remember he's just come from getting married to Juliet. So his head is in the clouds. He's so happy. So happy so that when he meets Tybalt, and Tybalt calls him a villain and challenges him, well, Romeo simply cannot accept that, and he responds by saying, no, I love you. You are like family to me. Now, literally, he is family to Romeo now, but Romeo simply does not want to come down off of this high. He's still in the comedy of the play. He's still in the first half. However, that's not going to be the case for much longer. Remember, this is a tragedy. So we are about to move into the tragic side of this play. One more thing. This is something that's called dramatic irony. In this case, we, the audience, are aware of something that the characters on stage are not. The dramatic irony here is that we know Romeo and Juliet have just been married, but no one else on stage aside from Romeo knows this information. The fact that we are in on something that they are not, that is dramatic irony, and that is something we're going to see a lot of in the rest of this play, specifically in Act 3.
Boy! This shall not excuse the injuries that thou hast done me. Therefore turn and draw.
I do protest I never injured thee, but love thee better than thou canst devise till thou shalt know the reason of my love. So, good Capulet, whose name I tender as dearly as mine own, be satisfied.
Oh, calm, dishonorable, vile submission. Alistair Cotter carries it away. Tybalt, you rat catcher, will you walk?
Mercutio cannot believe what he's just seen. For Romeo to simply walk away from that challenge that Tybalt has extended would be so dishonorable, it would be unheard of in this Italian culture at this time. So he can't allow this. And even though Romeo has stepped away from this fight, he steps up, and he has now challenged Tybalt to fight.
What wouldst thou have with me?
Oh, good king of cats. Nothing but one of your 9 lives that I mean to make bold withal. And as you shall use me hereafter, try beat the rest of the 8. Will you pluck your sword out of his pilcher by the ears? Make haste, lest mine be about your ears, ere it be out.
I am for you.
Gentlemen, you shall put that rapier up.
Come, sir. Your passado.
Attention, Tybalt!
We're going to beat down their weapons. Tybalt, take it! Gentlemen, for shame, forbear this outrage.
Benedicite!
Tybalt! It's yours, Mercutio! Bring it down, Tybalt.
Go, Tybalt.
Finish him, Tybalt. Take him down!
So far in this long choreographed fight, Tybalt and Mercutio have been trying to embarrass each other, to hurt each other, but they haven't been trying to kill each other. That changes here when Mercutio is defeated. He can't take that loss. And so now, these are death blows that these characters are going for. In a moment, Romeo steps in, and unfortunately, under his arm, Tybalt stabs and kills Mercutio. That was accidental. We can assume Tybalt didn't mean to try to kill Mercutio. He may have, but most interpretations will not. And now Mercutio is going to have a long death speech to his friends.
I a scratch, Mary, 'tis enough.
Courage, man, the hurt cannot be much.
No, 'tis not so deep as a well, nor so wide as a church door, but 'tis enough, 'twill serve. Ask for me tomorrow, and you shall find me a grave man.
No.
I am peppered, I warrant, for this world. A plague on both your houses.
Even in his death, Mercutio is still cracking jokes. He says the wound is not as deep as a well or as wide as a church door, but it's going to be enough to do the trick, to kill him. He then goes on to say that ask for me tomorrow and you'll find me a grave man, a very serious person, but also a man in a grave. This is just his character. Even in death, he still sees the humor in it.
A dog, a rat, a mouse, a cat to scratch a man to death. A braggart, a rogue, a villain who fights by the book of arithmetic. Why the devil came you between us? I was hurt under your arm.
I thought all for the best.
Help me into some house, Benvolio, or I shall faint. Plague on both your houses. They have made worms meat of me. I have it soundly too. Your houses!
In his death, Mercutio puts a curse on both the Montagues and the Capulets. He says a plague on both of your houses, cursing them out, saying your feuding and fighting has led to my death. This is the first real tragedy of the play. We are starting to see the consequences for this feuding. And Romeo actually gets blamed personally. He asks Romeo, why did you step between us? Tybalt stabbed me, because of you. Romeo is feeling the loss, and he's feeling the hurt here. And that's going to fuel his desire for revenge in just one moment.
This gentle man, the prince's near ally, my very friend, I've got this mortal hurt in my behalf, my reputation stained with Tybalt's slander. Tybalt, that hour hath been my kinsman. Sweet Juliet, thy beauty hath made me effeminate, and in my temper softened valor's steel.
Romeo, brave Mercutio's dead.
This day's black fate on more days doth depend. This but begins the woe, others must end.
In these lines, Romeo explains to us, the audience, why this moment is the climax or turning point of the play. Everything had been going very well so far. Things had been going great for Romeo and Juliet. They had met, fallen in love, made out a little bit, exchanged vows, gotten married. Everything was on an upward trajectory until these events right now. And Romeo tells us this. This day's black fate on more days doth depend. This but begins the woe others must end. He says this event will now lead to further future negative events. And he's right. As a result of this turning point, this climactic moment, more terrible things are going to happen. So that is why this moment in the play is the turning point or the climax. The climax always occurs in Act 3 in a Shakespearean play because the course of events drastically changes. It had been a comedy up until now. Now it is a tragedy.
Here comes the furious Tybalt back again!
Alive and triumph! And Mercutio slain? Away to heaven, respective lenity, and fire-eyed fury be my conduct now. Now, Tybalt! Take the villain back again, that late thou gavest me. Mercutio's soul is but a little way above our heads, staying for thine to keep him company. Either thou, or I, or both must go with him.
Wretched void and its consortium here shall with him hence.
Don't tell them that.
Down!
Romeo, away! Begone! Stand in our maze, Tybalt slain, and the citizens are up. The prince will doom thee death if thou art taken. Hence, away! Begone!
I am fortune's fool!
Why dost thou stay?
So Romeo, out of rage, kills Tybalt and instantly regrets doing so. He acted out of emotion and rage, very similar to how he has reacted towards his feelings with Juliet. It's very quick, very sudden, very impulsive. This shows his immaturity. And the consequences of his immaturity and his lack of thinking through his actions are going to lead to several tragedies in this play. That is a common idea that comes up time and time again in Romeo and Juliet.
Where are the vile beginners of this fray?
O noble prince, I can discover all the unlucky manage of this fatal brawl. There lies the man slain by young Romeo that slew thy kinsman, brave Mercutio. Devil! Oh, my cousin! Oh, my brother's child! Oh, prince! Oh, cousin! Oh, husband! The blood is spilled of our dear kinsman! Oh, prince, as thou art true, for blood of ours shed blood of Montague. Oh, cousin, cousin.
So the prince is in kind of a tough spot here. He walks in and he hears that Mercutio has been killed, and he sees that Tybalt's been killed, and he doesn't really know what's happened. But to make matters worse, Mercutio, if you remember, is actually his kinsman. Mercutio was not related to either the Capulets or the Montagues. He was just a friend of Romeo's. So now the prince has to make a decision. What's going to happen with Romeo, who we've heard is the one who killed Tybalt? He turns to Benvolio for some advice. What happened here? Tell me. And Benvolio is the level-headed, honest, truthful one in this play. So he tells the prince exactly what happened. Romeo entered, he tried to calm Tybalt down. Mercutio stepped in, Tybalt killed Mercutio, and out of revenge, Romeo acted impulsively and killed Tybalt. It wasn't entirely his fault.
He was Mercutio's friend.
The prince has to make a decision. How is he going to handle this violence? He had just told everyone that you're not allowed to fight in the streets again, or I will immediately put you to death. But Romeo has killed Tybalt, who killed Mercutio, a kinsman to the prince. So he has to handle this very delicately. How is he going to appease both the Montagues and the Capulets and the citizens of Verona? It's a challenging situation.
Immediately we do exile him hence. I have an interest in your hate's proceeding. My blood for your rude brawls doth lie a-bleeding. But I'll immerse you with so strong a fine that you shall all repent the loss of mine. I will be deaf to pleading and excuses. Nor tears, nor prayers shall purchase out abuses. Therefore use none. Let Romeo hence in haste. Else, when he's found, that hour is his last. Bear hence this body and attend our will. Mercy but murders, pardoning those that kill.
So after all that pleading and explaining and crying, the prince makes his decision. And for that offense, immediately we do exile him hence. Romeo has been exiled. He's been banished from Verona. He can never return. Now this is actually somewhat merciful. The prince could have just sentenced him to death and executed him. But he says, as long as I never see him again, he's free to go. But he can never, ever, ever step foot in Verona again.
Gallop apace, you fiery-footed steeds, towards Phoebus' lodging. Such a wagoner as Phaeton would whip you to the west and bring in cloudy night immediately. Spread thy close curtain, love performing night, that runaways' eyes may wink, and Romeo leap to these arms untalked of and unseen. Lovers can see to do their amorous rites by their own beauties, or if love be blind, it best agrees with night. Come, civil night, thou sober-suited matron all in black, and learn me how to lose a winning match, played for a pair of stainless maidenhoods. Hood my unmanned blood bating in my cheeks with thy black mantle, till strange love grown bold think true love acted simple modesty. Come night, come Romeo, come thou day in night, for thou wilt lie upon the wings of night, whiter than new snow upon a raven's back. Come, gentle night, come, loving black-browed night, give me my Romeo. And when he shall die, take him and cut him out in little stars, and he will make the face of heaven so fine that all the world will be in love with night and pay no worship to the garish sun. Oh, I have bought the mansion of a love, but not possessed it. And though I am sold, not yet enjoyed. So tedious is this day as is the night before some festival to an impatient child that hath new robes and may not wear them.
If you sense a shift in tones between Scene 1 and Scene 2 of Act 3, it's because Shakespeare very, very clearly intended for that to be the case. After the tragedy and death that we just saw in Scene 1, Act 3, Scene 2 begins with Juliet wishing for Romeo to come to her, to make love to her for the first time. And she even says, like, for herself, she is an impatient child the day before some festival. She is full of joy and suspense. So there is this huge shift from what we just saw. There's also a lot of sexuality in what she's saying here, which can be a little uncomfortable when we realize she is a 13-year-old woman. But she's speaking very openly to the audience. Shakespeare is not trying to make this at all censored. He's being very open about her feelings. And that just goes to show she doesn't really know what to expect. She's young, in some ways immature, and she's just preparing for this night, and she's full of anticipation. Unfortunately, this is another example of dramatic irony. We know something that she does not. We saw what just happened in Scene 1, and she's about to find out.
Oh, here comes my nurse, and she brings news, and every tongue that speaks but Romeo's name speaks heavenly eloquence. Now, nurse, what news? What hast thou there? The cords that Romeo bid thee fetch.
Aye, the cords.
Ay, maid, what news? Why dost thou wring thy hands?
Oh, well a day, he's dead, he's dead. We're undone, lady, we're undone. He's gone, he's killed, he's dead.
Juliet asks for some news from the nurse. What have you heard about Romeo? And the nurse responds in a way only the nurse could. He's dead, oh, what a day, he's dead. This is very unclear, and Juliet, who has no idea what's going on, hears he's dead. She assumes the nurse is speaking about Romeo. The next little bit is kind of an example of comedic relief. The nurse is going to draw this out before giving any real information to Juliet, and let's just see where Juliet's head goes when she thinks that Romeo is the one who's died.
Romeo can, though heaven cannot. Oh, Romeo, Romeo, whoever would have thought it, Romeo?
What devil art thou that dost torment me thus? This torture should be roared in dismal hell. Hath Romeo slain himself? Say thou but I, and that bare vowel I shall poison more than the death-darting eye of cockatrice. If he be slain, say I, or if not, no. Brief sounds determine of my weal or woe.
Oh, Romeo, Romeo, whoever ever would have thought it Romeo? The nurse still is not giving any clear information to Juliet. And Juliet assumes that the nurse is suggesting Romeo has died. But more than that, she makes a bit of a leap here. She says, "Hath Romeo slain himself?" That's quite a leap to make. She just assumed for some reason Romeo committed suicide. Why would that be the case? Why would he do that? They just got married. Well, this is another example of Shakespeare foreshadowing the outcome of this play. We're going to see a lot of examples of foreshadowing of death in the next few scenes.
I saw the wound. I saw it with mine eyes. God save the mark here on his manly breast. A piteous course. A bloody piteous course. Pale, pale as ashes, all bedaubed in blood, all in gore blood. I swooned at the sight.
Oh, break my heart. Poor banquet, break at once. To prison eyes, ne'er look on liberty. Vile earth, to earth resign, end motion here, and thou and Romeo press one heavy bier.
Oh, Tybalt, Tybalt, the best friend I had. Oh, courteous Tybalt, honest gentleman, that ever I should live to see thee dead.
What storm is this that blows so contrary? Is Romeo slaughtered, and is Tybalt dead, my dear loved cousin, and my dearer lord?
Oh, Tybalt, Tybalt, the best friend I had. Finally, the nurse mentions Tybalt's name. And Juliet is now even more confused. Wait, what now? Is Romeo slaughtered and Tybalt dead? Can this really be happening? So the nurse has to explain this to Juliet. She is so wildly confused by what's going on.
Tybalt is gone, and Romeo banished. Romeo that killed him, he is banished.
Oh God, did Romeo's hand shed Tybalt's blood?
It did. It did, alas the day, it did.
Oh, serpent heart, hid with a flowering face. Did ever dragon keep so fair a cave? Beautiful, tyrant, fiend, angelical, just opposite to what thou justly seemst. A damned saint, an honorable villain. Oh, nature, what hadst thou to do in hell when thou didst bower the spirit of a fiend in mortal paradise of such sweet flesh? Was ever book containing such vile matter so fairly bound? Oh, that deceit should dwell in such a gorgeous palace.
In this speech, Juliet curses Romeo for what he's done. And in a way that's actually very similar to Romeo's loving-hate speech in Act 1. She goes on to make all these paradoxes, these statements like beautiful tyrant, fiend angelical, damned saint, honorable villain. She's cursing Romeo, saying this awful, terrible person, even though he seems so loving and sweet and perfect and beautiful. Damn him to hell for what he's done.
There's no trust, no faith, no honesty in men. All perjured, all forsworn, all naught, all dissemblers. Ah, where's my man? Give me some aqua vitae. These griefs, these woes, these sorrows make me old. Shame come to Romeo.
Blistered be thy tongue for such a wish. He was not born to shame. Upon his brow shame is ashamed to sit, for 'tis a throne where honor may be crowned, sole monarch of the universal earth. Oh, what a beast was I to chide at him.
I always feel like I'm getting whiplash with Juliet's emotions in this scene. Right after she just cursed Romeo and called him an evil, terrible dragon, the nurse says, "Shame to Romeo," and Juliet responds by saying, "Blistered be thy tongue, you take that back. Romeo is perfect and I love him. How dare you?" She can't come to terms with her emotions because they're so quick and sudden upon her. At 1 second she's cursing him, the next second she says he's perfect, and she's the one who should be cursed for even suggesting he was imperfect.
Will you speak well of him that killed your cousin?
Shall I speak ill of him that is my husband? Ah, poor my lord, what tongue shall smooth thy name when I, thy 3 hours wife, have mangled it? But wherefore, villain, didst thou kill my cousin? That villain cousin would have killed my husband. Back, foolish tears, back to your native spring. Your tributary drops belong to woe, which you mistaking offer up to joy. All this is comfort. Wherefore weep I then? Some word there was worser than Tybalt's death that murdered me. I would forget it fain, but oh, it presses to my memory like damned guilty deeds to sinners' minds. Tybalt is dead, and Romeo banished, that one word banished, hath slain 10,000 Tybalts. Why followed not when she said Tybalt's dead thy father or thy mother, nay, or both, which modern lamentation might have moved, but with a rearward following Tybalt's death, Romeo is banished? To speak that word is father, mother, Tybalt, Romeo, Juliet, all slain, all dead. Romeo is banished. There is no end, no limit, measure bound. In that word's death, no words can that woe sound.
Whoa. Juliet here says that when she hears Romeo's been banished, it's like hearing that Tybalt's been killed 10,000 times. She said she'd rather to hear her father, mother, Tybalt, Romeo, and herself were all killed than hear that Romeo's been banished. This is a huge exaggeration, a huge hyperbole of her feelings. But it is something that we're going to hear again later on in this act. These characters exaggerate just how bad this actually is. Romeo's just been banished. He just can't go to Verona anymore. He can live anywhere else in the world. But these two are going to treat it like it's the worst thing that could possibly have ever happened to anyone.
Where is my father and my mother, nurse?
Weeping and wailing o'er Tybalt's corse. Will you go to them? I will bring you thither.
Wash they his wounds with tears? Mine shall be spent when theirs are dry, for Romeo's banishment. Take up those cords. Poor ropes. You are beguiled, both you and I, for Romeo is exiled. He made you for a highway to my bed, but I, a maid, die maiden widowed. Come cords, come nurse, I'll to my wedding bed, and death, not Romeo, take my maidenhead.
Hie to your chamber. I'll find Romeo to comfort you. I wot well where he is. Hark you, your Romeo will be here at night. I'll to him. He's hid at Lauren's cell.
Oh, find him. Give this ring to my true knight, and bid him come to take his last farewell.
Act 3, Scene 2 concludes with one last bombshell. The nurse says, "Don't worry, go to bed. Tonight I will find Romeo and I will lead him to your room so that he can comfort you after your wedding day." That's a huge deal. Romeo's been banished. He needs to get out of town as soon as possible. But the nurse is actually making arrangements for Romeo to spend their wedding night together. That seems like it's not the best of ideas, but we're about to see the nurse and Friar Lawrence might not be making the wisest adult decisions on behalf of these young teenagers.
Romeo, come forth, thou fearful man. Affliction is enamored of thy parts, and thou art wedded to calamity.
Father, what news? What is thy prince's doom? What sorrow craves acquaintance at my hand that I yet know not?
Too familiar is my dear son with such sour company. I bring thee tidings of the prince's doom.
What less than doomsday is the prince's doom?
A gentler judgment vanished from his lips. Not body's death, but body's banishment.
Banishment? Be merciful. Say death. For exile hath more terror in his look, much more than death. Do not say banishment.
Here in Act 3, Scene 3, we begin with Romeo on the floor in Friar Lawrence's hut. And when he hears that he's been banished from the prince, he responds very similarly to the way that Juliet does. He says, "Oh, be merciful, say death. I'd rather be executed than have to be banished away from Juliet." These two are exaggerating just how bad this punishment actually is, and Friar Lawrence is going to try and convince him of that.
Hence from Verona art thou banished. Be patient, for the world is broad and wide.
There is no world without Verona walls, but purgatory, torture, hell itself.
No deadly sin, no rude unthankfulness. Thy fault our law calls death, but the kind prince, taking thy part, hath rushed aside the law, and turned that black word death to banishment. This is a dear mercy, and thou seest it not.
'Tis torture, not mercy. Heaven is here, where Juliet lives, and every cat and dog and little mouse, every unworthy thing, live here in heaven and may look on her. But Romeo may not. More validity, more honorable state, more courtship live in carrion flies than Romeo. They may seize on the white wonder of dear Juliet's hand and steal a mortal blessing from her lips. But Romeo may not. He is banished. This may flies do when I from this must fly. They are free men. I am banished. And sayest thou yet? Exile is not death.
Romeo here complains that he'd rather be the cat or dog or mouse or even fly that gets to live in Verona because it gets to be among Juliet's presence, but he's been banished. So in this banishment, he's been made worse than the most unworthy thing on this planet.
Hast thou no poison mixed? No sharp ground knife? No sudden need of hast so mean, but banish it to kill me. Banish it.
And then Romeo says, "Have you no poison mixed or sharp ground knife, no sudden mean of death?" That would be easier than banishment. So he's again exaggerating just how bad banishment is, but this is huge foreshadowing of how they're going to die later on in the play. Poison and a sharp ground knife. Romeo is saying, I'd rather kill myself to end my own life than be apart from Juliet. And in the end, this is exactly what's going to happen.
Friar, the damned use that word in hell. Howling attends it. How hast thou the heart, being a divine, a ghostly confessor, a sin absolver, and my friend professed, to mangle me with that word? Banish it!
Thou fond mad man, hear me a little speak.
Thou wilt speak again of banishment.
I'll give thee armor to keep off that word. Adversity's sweet milk, philosophy, to comfort thee though thou art banished.
Yet banished. Hang up philosophy. Unless philosophy can make a Juliet. Displant a town, reverse a prince's doom, it helps not, it prevails not. Talk no more.
Oh, then I see that madmen have no ears.
How should they when that wise men have no eyes?
Let me dispute with thee of thy estate.
Thou canst not speak of that thou dost not feel. Wert thou as young as I, Juliet, thy love, an hour, but married, Tybalt, murdered, doting, like me, and like me, banished, then mightst thou speak, and mightst thou tear thy hair and fall upon the ground as I do now, taking the measure of an unmade grave.
Arise, one knocks. Good Romeo, hide thyself.
Not I, unless the breath of heart-sick groans mislike enfold me from the search of eyes.
I've said before that I don't really like the character of Romeo because I feel he's immature and just kind of dumb in some ways. And I feel like this scene is the best example of that. Here, Romeo acts like a young child. And yeah, no, I get he's like 18, but I'm talking young. He's throwing a temper tantrum. He blames the friar for being old and unable to feel these strong, passionate feelings that he has for Juliet. And as a result, friar, you can't possibly understand what I'm going through. And then he falls to the ground in what he says is an unmade grave. Then there's knocking on the door. Friar Lawrence tells him, you need to go hide. But Romeo says, nope, I'm not getting up. I don't care who it is. They can take me. I'm just going to stay here. He's throwing a legitimate temper tantrum. I have 4-year-old children who do exactly the same thing. So this is just Romeo being a whiny baby at this point.
Hark, how they knock. Who's there? Romeo, arise. Thou wilt be taken. Stand up. God's will. What simpleness is this? I come. Who knocked so hard? Whence come you? What's your will?
Let me come in and you shall know my errand. I come from Lady Juliet.
Welcome then.
Oh, Holy Friar. Oh, tell me, Holy Friar, where is my lady's lord? Where's Romeo?
There on the ground, with his own tears made drunk.
Even so lies she, blubbering and weeping and weeping and blubbering. Stand up. Stand up. Stand and you be a man. For Juliet's sake, for her sake, rise and stand. Why should you fall into so deep an awe?
Nurse.
Aye, sir. Well, death's the end of all.
Spakest thou of Juliet? How is it with her? Does not she think me an old murderer now I have stained the childhood of our joy with blood removed but little from her own? Where is she, and how doth she, and what says my concealed lady to our cancelled love?
Oh, she says nothing, sir, but weeps and weeps, and now falls on her bed, and then starts up, and Tybalt calls, and then on Romeo cries, and then down falls again.
As if that name, shot from the deadly level of a gun, did murder her. As that name's cursed hand murdered her kinsman. Oh, friar, tell me, in what vile part of this anatomy doth my name lodge? Tell me, that I might sack that hateful mansion! Hold thy desperate hand!
When Romeo hears that he hurt Juliet's feelings and he's been the cause of her tears, he offers to kill himself with the dagger. Again, this shows these two characters are leaping to the thought of suicide. This is foreshadowing for the future, but it also shows just how immature and reckless they are in their young age.
Art thou a man? Thy form cries out thou art. Thy tears are womanish. Thy wild action of the unreasonable fury of a beast. Hast thou slain Tybalt? Wilt thou slay thyself? And slay thy lady that in thy life lives by doing damned hate upon thyself? What? Rouse thee, man! Thy Juliet's alive, for whose dear sake thou wast but lately dead. There art thou happy. Tybalt would kill thee, but thou slewest Tybalt. There art thou happy too. The law that threatens death becomes thy friend and turns it to exile. There art thou happy. Thou hast amazed me. By my brotherhood, I thought thy disposition better tempered. Go, get thee to thy love as was decreed. Ascend her chamber. Hence, and comfort her. But look, you stay not till the watch be set, for then thou canst not pass to Mantua, where thou shalt live, till we can find a time to blaze your marriage, reconcile your friends, beg pardon of the prince, and call you back with 20,000 times more joy than thou wentst forth in lamentation. Go before, nurse. Commend me to thy lady, and bid her hasten all the house to bed. Romeo is coming.
If you're trying to read along with the texts to what Friar Lawrence has said in here in this long speech, you might get a little lost. The director has cut quite a bit out. But that's okay, because he kept the most important elements of this long speech. The first thing he says is that Romeo has a lot to be happy for. Tybalt tried to kill him, Romeo fought him off. The prince should have sentenced him to death, but sentenced him to banishment. Juliet is still alive. There are all these things Romeo has to be happy and thankful for, so Romeo needs to accept that. The second thing he says is that Romeo should go to Juliet's chambers tonight. They should be together tonight. So there's that. And then the third piece of information is that after that, you need to go to Mantua. Mantua is another city outside of Verona, not far from it. And Romeo is going to live there, at least for a little while, until things calm down. And maybe then they can speak to the prince and try and get Romeo back into Verona. But this is the plan. After tonight, after Romeo spends his wedding night with his new wife, Juliet, he's going to run off to Mantua. And that sets the stage for the next act.
Oh, Lord, I could have stayed here all the night to hear good counsel. Oh, what learning is. My lord, I'll tell my lady you will come.
Do so, and bid my sweet prepare to chide.
Here's a ring she bid me give you, sir. Hie you. Make haste, for it grows very late.
How well my comfort is revived by this.
Go hence. Good night. And here stands all your state. Either be gone before the watch be set, or by the break of day disguised from hence. Sojourn in Mantua. I'll find out thy man, and he shall signify from time to time every good hap to you that chances here. Give me thy hand. It is late. Farewell. Good night.
But that a joy past joy calls out on me. It were a grief so grief to part with thee. Farewell.
Things have fallen out, sir, so unluckily that we have had no time to move our daughter. Look you, she loved her kinsman Tybalt dearly. So did I. Well, we were born to die. 'Tis very late. She'll not come down tonight. I promise you, but for your company, I would have been in bed an hour ago.
These times of woe afford no time to woo. Madam, good night. Commend me to your daughter.
I will, and know her mind early tomorrow. Tonight she's mewed up to her heaviness.
Sir Paris, I will make a desperate tender of my child's love. I think she will be ruled in all respects by me. Nay, more, I doubt it not. Wife, go you to her ere you go to bed. Acquaint her here of my son Paris's love, and bid her, mark you me, on Wednesday next. But soft, what day is this?
Monday, my lord.
Monday? Well, Wednesday is too soon. A Thursday let it be. A Thursday tell her she will be married to this noble earl.
Act 3, Scene 4 starts off with a bombshell. Paris is back, and he's visiting the Capulets to mourn with them and express his sorrow for their loss. And Capulet says, in this time of sadness, we need some celebration. And so he agrees he's going to arrange the marriage between his daughter and Paris. Juliet will now marry Paris, according to Capulet. He goes on to say, what day is it? Let's do it on Wednesday of next week. Oh, it's Monday today? Ooh, that's not enough time. Okay, Thursday of next week it is. So he's rushing this. Not quite as rushed as Romeo and Juliet rushed their marriage, but there is a sense of urgency in the air.
Will you be ready? Do you like the haste? We'll keep no great ado, a friend or two, for hark you, Tybalt being slain so late. It may be thought we held him carelessly, being our kinsman, if we revelled much. Therefore we'll have some half a dozen friends and there an end. But what say you to Thursday?
My lord, I would that Thursday were tomorrow.
Well, get you gone, a Thursday be it then. Go you to Juliet, ere you go to bed. Prepare her wife against this wedding day. Farewell, my lord. Light to my chamber hold. For me, it is so very, very late that we may call it early by and by. Good night.
And that's it. That's all of scene 4. Now, the last thing that Capulet says to his wife here is, prepare Juliet. Before you come to bed, go let her know this news. And we see here, Lady Capulet had thought of it, but for whatever reason decides against it. It's probably a good thing she did not go up there, because as we can see, as we move into scene 5, Romeo's in her room. She's with another man, her husband, whom these characters know nothing about.
Wilt thou be gone? It is not yet near day. It was the nightingale and not the lark that pierced the fearful hollow of thine ear. Nightly she sings on yond pomegranate tree. Believe me, love, it was the nightingale.
So this is the morning after the consummation of their marriage, and Juliet is trying to convince Romeo to stay just a little bit longer. She says, that bird you just heard out there, it wasn't a lark, which would signify that the day has started, the sun has come up, but it was a nightingale, a bird that sings at the nighttime, so you don't have to leave yet. In reality, we know it's the morning, and Romeo knows he has to leave, but they're going to try and draw out this goodbye as long as they can.
It was the lark. The herald of the morn, no nightingale. Look, love, what envious streaks do lace the severing clouds in yonder east. Night's candles are burnt out, and jocund day stands tiptoe on the misty mountain tops. I must be gone and live, or stay and die.
Yond light is not daylight, I know it I. It is some meteor that the sun exhales to be to thee this night a torch-bearer, and to light thee on thy way to Mantua. Therefore stay yet. Thou needst not to be gone.
Let me be ta'en, let me be put to death. I am content, so thou wilt have it so. I'll say, yon grey is not the morning's eye, 'tis but the pale reflex of Cynthia's brow. No, that is not the lark, whose notes do beat this vaulty heaven so high above our heads. I have more care to stay than will to go. Come, death, and welcome. Juliet wills it so. How is it, my soul? Let's talk, 'tis not day.
It is. It is. Hie hence, be gone away. It is the lark that sings so out of tune, straining harsh discords and unpleasing sharps. Some say the lark makes sweet division. This doth not so, for she divideth us. Some say the lark and loathed toad changed eyes. Oh, now I would they had changed voices too, since arm from arm that voice doth us affray, hunting thee hence with hunts up to the day. Oh, now be gone. More light and light it grows.
More light and light. More dark and dark our woes.
Madam.
Nurse?
Your lady mother is coming to your chamber. The day is broke. Be wary. Look about.
Then window, let day in, and let life out.
Farewell. Farewell. One kiss and I'll descend.
Art thou gone so? My lord, my love, my friend, I must hear from thee every day in the hour, for in a minute there are many days. Oh, by this count I shall be much in years ere I again behold my Romeo.
Farewell. I will omit no opportunity to convey my greetings, love, to thee.
Oh, think'st thou we shall ever meet again?
I doubt it not. And all these woes shall serve for sweet discourses in our time to come.
O God, I have an ill-divining soul. Methinks I see thee now thou art below, as one dead in the bottom of a tomb. Either my eyesight fails, or thou look'st pale.
Well, trust me, love, in my eye, so do you. Dry sorrow drinks our blood. Adieu. Adieu.
As they say goodbye here, the amount of foreshadowing between these two is almost prophetic. Juliet asks, "Do you think we'll ever meet again?" And Romeo tells her, "I doubt it not, and when we do, all these woes shall serve for sweet discourses in our times to come." So he's saying, as a result of all these events and our being apart, all these woes are going to turn to happiness and joy, which is ultimately what comes true in the very end of the play after everyone's deaths. Juliet even says, "I think I see you now. You look pale, almost as though I'm looking down at you as though you're at the bottom of a tomb." Again, foreshadowing the deaths of these characters.
O Fortune, Fortune, all men call thee fickle. If thou art fickle, what dost thou with him that is renowned for faith? Be fickle, Fortune, for then I hope thou wilt not keep him long, but send him back.
Oh, daughter, are you up?
Who is that calls? It is my lady mother. Is she not down so late or up so early? What unaccustomed cause procures her hither?
Why, how now, Juliet?
Madam, I am not well.
Evermore weeping for a cousin's death. What? Wilt thou wash him from his grave with tears? And if thou couldst not make him live, therefore have done. Some grief shows much of love, but much of grief shows still some want of wit.
Lady Capulet comes in and sees Juliet is still crying quite a bit. And she asks Juliet, What is going on? Are you still crying over Tybalt's death?" "Juliet, you need to get over this. Too much grief is not good." Now, ultimately, we understand she's actually been crying because Romeo has run away. But even in the context that she thinks this is, that's still weird. Tybalt had just been murdered the day before. We can accept and understand why Juliet would be crying and grieving so hard if that was the case.
Yet let me weep for such a feeling loss.
So shall you feel the loss, but not the friend that you weep for.
Feeling so the loss, I cannot choose but ever weep the friend.
Well, girl, thou weepst not so much for his death, as that the villain lives that slaughtered him.
What villain, madam?
That same villain, Romeo.
Villain and he be many miles asunder. God pardon him. I do with all my heart. And yet no man like he doth grieve my heart.
That's because the traitor murderer lives.
I, madam, from the reach of these my hands, would none but I might venge my cousin's death.
We will have vengeance for it, fear thou not, and then I hope thou wilt be satisfied.
Indeed, I never shall be satisfied with Romeo till I behold him dead. Is my poor heart so for a kinsman vexed? Madam, if you could find out but a man to bear a poison, I would temper it, that Romeo should, upon receipt thereof, soon sleep in quiet. Oh, how my heart abhors to hear him named, and cannot come to him, to wreak the love I bore my cousin Tybalt upon his body that hath slaughtered him.
Here we have another example of foreshadowing, but in this case, Juliet might have just cursed her husband. She says she'll never be satisfied until she sees Romeo again. Dead, that is. She's trying to cover her tracks based on what she just said in front of her mother. And then she goes on to say, if you knew someone who would be able to concoct a poison, I would love to see him take that poison and see him dead in front of me. Well, ultimately, that is exactly what's going to happen. Romeo is going to take his life by poison. So Juliet's going to get her wish here. She clearly didn't mean what she was saying to her mother, but that ultimately is what's going to happen.
Find thou the means, and I'll find such a man. But now I'll tell thee joyful tidings, girl.
And joy comes well in such a needy time. What are they, I beseech your ladyship?
Well, thou hast a careful father, child. One who, to put thee from thy heaviness, hath sorted out a sudden day of joy, that thou expects not, nor I looked not for.
Madam, in happy time. What day is that?
Marry, my child, early next Thursday morn, the gallant, young, and noble gentleman, the County Paris at St. Peter's Church, shall haply make thee there a joyful bride.
Now by St. Peter's Church, and Peter too, he shall not make me there a joyful bride. I wonder at this haste that I must wed ere he that should be husband comes to woo. I pray you tell my lord and father, madam, I will not marry yet, and when I do, I swear it shall be Romeo, whom you know I hate, rather than Paris. These are news indeed.
Lady Capulet gives Juliet the so-called good news of the day, that her father has arranged for a joyous day in which Juliet will marry County Paris. And she's hoping that Juliet is going to take this well. But Juliet takes it about as badly as could possibly have been taken. She says, no, I'm not going to marry Paris. In fact, I would rather marry Romeo, the guy who just murdered our cousin.
Here comes your father. Tell him so yourself, and see how he will take it at your hands.
When the sun sets, the air doth drizzle dew. But for the sunset of my brother's son, it rains downright. How now, a conduit girl, what? Still in tears, evermore showering? How now, wife, have you delivered to her our decree?
Aye, sir, but she will none. She gives you thanks. I would the fool were married to her grave.
Soft, take me with you. Take me with you, wife. How? Will she none? Doth she not give us thanks? Is she not proud? Doth she not count herself blessed, unworthy as she is, that we have wrought so worthy a gentleman to be her bridegroom?
Not proud you have, but thankful that you have. Proud can I never be of what I hate, but thankful even for hate that is meant love.
How? Chop logic, what is this? Proud and I thank you not, and yet not proud?
Mistress Minion, you thank me no thankings, nor proud me no prouds, but fettle your fine joints against Thursday next to go with Paris to St. Peter's Church, or I will drag thee on a hurdle thither. Out, you green sickness carrion, out, you baggage! You tallow-base!
Five, what, are you mad?
Good father, I beseech you on my knees. Hear me with patience, but to speak a word.
Hang thee, young wretch, thou disobedient baggage! I tell thee what! Get thee to church a Thursday, or never have to look me in the face. Speak not, reply not, do not answer me. My fingers itch. Wife, we scarce thought us blessed that God had lent us but this only child. Now I see this one is one too much, and that we have a curse in having her. Out on a Hilding!
When Juliet tells her father that she doesn't want to marry Paris, Capulet takes it poorly. He threatens to beat her. He threatens to disown her. He says she's a shame and a curse upon them. So he is insisting now that Juliet is going to marry Paris in just over a week. This is urgency being added to the play. Juliet has to make a very, very important decision. Will she run away to be with Romeo? Will she continue to refuse her father's expectations? Or will she just give in and marry Paris? Which, though it's illegal, might still be the best decision for her. We don't know. She has to make a very important decision, and she has to make it quickly. This is also another great example of dramatic irony. We know that Juliet can't make this decision, but Capulet doesn't, Lady Capulet doesn't, and so they are very persistent in their expectations.
You are to blame, my lord, to rate her so.
And why, my Lady Wisdom? Hold your tongue, good Prudence. Smother with your gossips, girl.
I speak no treason.
Oh, God, you good den.
May not one speak?
Peace, you mumbling fool. Utter your gravity's or a gossip's bowl, for here we need it not.
You are too hot.
God's bread, it makes me mad. Day, night, late, early, at home, abroad. Alone, in company, waking or sleeping, still my care hath been to see her matched. And having now provided a gentleman of princely parentage, of fair domains, youthful, nobly trained, stuffed, as they say, with honorable parts, proportioned as one would wish a man to be. And then to have a wretched, puling fool, a whining mammet in her fortune's tender, to answer, I'll not wed. I am too young, I cannot love, I pray you pardon me. Pardon you will not wed, I'll pardon you. Graze where you will not house with me. Look to it, think on it, I do not use to jest. Thursday is near, lay hand on heart, advise, and you be mine, I'll give you to my friend, and you be not, hang, beg, starve, die in the streets. For by my soul I'll ne'er acknowledge thee, nor what is mine shall never do thee good. Trust to it, bethink you, I'll not be forsworn.
Is there no pity sitting in the clouds that sees into the bottom of my grief? Oh, sweet my mother, cast me not away. Delay this marriage for a month, a week, or if you do not, make the bridal bed in that dim monument where Tybalt lies.
Talk not to me, for I'll not speak a word. Do as thou wilt, for I have done with thee.
Oh, God! Oh, nurse! How shall this be prevented? My husband is on earth, my faith in heaven. How shall that faith return again to earth unless that husband send it me from heaven by leaving earth? Comfort me. Counsel me. Alack, alack, that heaven should practice stratagems upon so soft a subject as myself. What sayest thou? Hast thou not a word of joy? Some comfort, nurse.
Faith, here it is. Romeo is banished, and for all the world to nothing that he dares ne'er come back to challenge thee. Or if he do, it needs must be by stealth. Then, since the case so stands as now it doth, I think it best you married with the county. Oh, he's a lovely gentleman. Romeo's a dish clout to him. Beshrew my very heart, I think you're happy in this second match, for it excels your first. Or if it did not, your first is dead. Or 'twere as good he were, as living here and you no use of him.
Juliet has begged and pleaded with her mother and father, but to no avail. Her father has said that if she doesn't agree to marry Paris next week, he will cast her out on the streets and doesn't care if he finds her dead. She will already be dead to him. So then Juliet turns to the nurse for some guidance, and the nurse gives some very controversial suggestion here. She says, you should probably just marry Paris. He was better in a lot of ways than Romeo could have been, and it just makes more sense. You'll actually improve your life by marrying this guy. So even though she's one of the few characters aware of what's going on, she still advises Juliet to marry Paris. Juliet's running out of options. She has no one left to turn to. And so that's why in Act 4, she's going to begin by going to Friar Lawrence.
Speak'st thou this from thy heart?
And from my soul, too. Else beshrew them both.
Amen.
What?
Well, thou hast comforted me marvelous much. Go in and tell my lady I am gone, having displeased my father, to Lawrence cell to make confession and to be absolved.
Marry, I will. And this is wisely done.
Ancient damnation, O most wicked fiend, is't more sin to wish me thus forsworn, or to dispraise my lord with that same tongue which she hath praised him with above compare so many thousand times? Go, counselor, thou and my bosom henceforth shall be twain. I'll to the friar to know his remedy. If all else fail, myself have power to die.
And with that, Act 3 comes to an end. Juliet says that she has no one left to turn to. She can't trust her parents, her counselor, the nurse anymore. So she's going to go to Friar Lawrence. And if he can't solve this problem, well, then she has one last solution. She'll take her own life. Again, this is foreshadowing for the end of the play, and we get to see how these characters so quickly turn to suicide as the last resort to their problems.